Seattle Atheist Church, because good works in non-mysterious ways.
Thank you so much. I want to start by thanking every single one of you who are here today, and also Jack, Mark, Eva for giving us this opportunity to talk about this topic, which is really, really sensitive to our community, and really appreciate your interest in knowing more about this and learning more about the women's struggle in Iran. So I've prepared a presentation, which, if you don't mind, can I go ahead and start sharing my screen, Jack? Thank you. So while that gets prepared, bear with me. My name is Naseem Ghazanfari. I'm here in Seattle, Washington. I moved to the United States in 2007, and I moved to Washington State now about getting close to 6 years ago. Very happy to be here. We chose Washington State to be our home because it's a progressive state, and I was not going to go back to Ohio, where I did my training. No hard feelings, lovely people, but I think you know what I mean. All right, so I should be ready here in a second. Okay, so woman, life, freedom. I was gonna ask if I can just have a raise of hands of anybody who has ever heard of this before. Okay, okay, thank you. So I guess it might be interesting to hear more about it. So Iran, where I'm coming from, it's a very large country in Middle East. It's the 17th largest country in the world and one of the world's oldest civilization. Uh, about year 700, the Arab Muslims conquered Iran. And after that, Iran still remained a center for philosophy, science, and literature, both in the Muslim world and globally. Uh, Multiple dynasties ruled Iran since that year. Most recently, it was the Pahlavi monarchy, which was overthrown in 1979 during a revolution, after which eventually Islamic Republic took over. And that's, I think, a very important point for a lot of people to recognize that the pictures that you are seeing here are women in Iran before the Islamic Republic. You can, at least for myself, it's hard to distinguish if you're looking at Iran or maybe somewhere, a corner in New York or somewhere. But unfortunately, after that event and under the authoritarian regime of Islamic Republic, Iranians suffered from mass executions and systematic human rights and women rights violation. Under this Islamic Republic, women especially have been under a focus and cornerstone of this fascist government. What have happened is that in Iran, people have tried to manage to have multiple uprisings in the past 40 some years. But unfortunately, they have faced severe crackdown, a brutal crackdown by this government. And they unfortunately have suffered from more and more casualties through these years. And why should it matter to other people? Because Islamic Republic is not just a local government. Their ideology, they have a very ambitious ideology worldwide, and they have bases and they interfere with local politics, and they have a military presence in other countries, including Syria, Iraq, Pakistan, and Israeli-Palestine region, Yemen, etc. So the pictures on the right are just some of the people who have lost their lives, the young lives, and their mothers who have formed a coalition, and I will go through some of that in the future slides. But woman life, freedom. As in the breakout room, I was talking to the group as a now 44-year-old woman who lives in the United States, I try to forget about what happened in Iran to myself and to people I knew, and just, move here, live the freedom, breathe the air, and be grateful for being here. I was not active in any politics, although I definitely followed what happened in my home country. But what happened in September of 2022 changed everything for me and for a lot of people in our community. In September of 2022, Mahsa Amini, who was a 22-year-old girl from a minority in Iran, in Kurdistan. As you understand, end of September was the end of the summer vacation. She was just visiting the capital city of Tehran with her family, and she was walking in the park with her brother, and she was pulled over by what they call morality police, which is a branch of a plainclothes militia of the government who can stop you at any corner, and if they don't like the way you dress, they can pull you over, they can kick you, they can arrest you, who knows what happens to you. And this is what happened to Mahsa. She was covering her hair, but part of her hair was showing, which is very common, and for whatever reason, they didn't like it. They pulled her into the van, and they beat this 22-year-old so hard that she went into a coma. She was in coma and life support for 2 days. And these two brave journalists, two women, broke out the story of her being on the life support. And as you see, there's a very infamous photo of her parents hugging each other and praying for their daughter. And as this was happening, we were all over the world, we were hoping for Mahsa to wake up, but she didn't. So that sparked an uprising in Iran. Iranians poured to the streets. Girls were waving their scarves and putting it on fire and cutting their hair as a symbol of oppression, because that's what they are being killed for. That's what Mahsa died for. And they were faced with brutal crackdown. I mean, these are armless, mostly between 16 to 22-year-old kids, I would say, because they were the age of my children. And any of them could be my child, just like any other Iranians. And that's why this was different. This felt different. And they were so brave, absolutely fearless. They knew what they're dealing with. Just a couple of years prior to that, the Islamic Republic killed 1,500 people in another uprising within a span of 3 days. But that didn't stop these children to go to the streets. They started posting on their social media and everywhere. These are real pictures from that time, saying no to the mullahs, no to the regime armed forces, although they get killed and they paid for the price of that. And not they only were killed, they were raped, they were blinded, and many other atrocities happened during that time span. Only a few of the people who lost their lives are in this picture, and you can see how the regime just filled the body of those little children with bullets. I always quote, because this was what resonated with me. I have a teenage son, and one of the kids who lost his life was only 17, the age of my son. And his father actually asked this question. He said, "How could you fit over 150 bullets in my little child's body?" Not only they killed people on the street, they took them to the jail and started executing them. Execution in Iran has the higher rate per capita. We are in number, we're second only to China, but when you think about it, about the per capita, Iran is number one. Almost every 8 hours, one person was being executed. And as the middle picture shows, they would put people handcuffed to the poles torture them, and deprive them from even water before they would hang them. As the protests started to be less and less outside in the street, the civic disobedience continues in Iran. The children of Iran, they continue to remove their headscarf in disobedience to the law, kiss each other in public, and ask for the basic human rights, basically, that they deserve. I put this slide again here because I wanted to remind everybody that what happens in Iran does not stay in Iran. It affects people in China, in Ukraine, Hong Kong, Tibet, Uyghurs, everywhere. This is not a regional problem. One of the major issues we have been dealing with in our community is fighting the disinformation and raising awareness, which is what I'm truly appreciating for this community today to be part of and be able to answer some of those questions and bust some of those myths. I have some videos to show you what sometimes you see on the media is not what the reality is in Iran. So please listen. This is a conversation about morality police, the same morality police that killed Mahsa. And currently, as we speak, another girl is also on life support. Numerous other girls have been killed. They just don't make it to the media. But listen how they whitewash this crime, please.
I think the IRGC is not quite the bogeyman that we think. Many of us may have had experiences with, as an example, the morality police, which is part of that whole securitization thing. And when you talk to them, some of them are just like, you know, man, I just got a job to do, leave me alone. You know, tell your wife to put her, you know, damn headscarf up a little higher and leave me alone.
You know, we see human rights as a bigger issue, at least the diaspora does, and Americans who are interested see it as a bigger issue than most Iranians inside Iran. When you look at the population, even of young people in jail, it's not significant. It's not. They haven't imprisoned 40,000 journalists. Like how many does Turkey imprison?
Well,
yeah,
not 40,000 journalists, but 40,000 people.
40,000.
Nobody in Iran, I think, thinks that they shot down a Ukrainian jet with Iranians on purpose. Clearly, it was an accident. Clearly, it's that so-called fog of war.
So. Yeah, no, it was not. It was not an accident. They did shot at that Ukrainian jet, and that's another issue. It is definitely not a laughable matter for our children who lost their lives and continue to lose their lives.
I think the IRGC.
So another part, I'll give you another example. In 2009, there was a huge uprising called Green Movement in Iran. And with your permission, I will play this video. And I want to, they're chanting in Farsi, but you're going to hear, because at that time, President Obama was in the office. And people were begging that he says something in support. So they were chanting, Obama, Obama, are you with them or with us? And just see if you can probably pick up the word Obama from the chant. And listen how it was portrayed in the media here.
I've not heard from anyone inside of Iran, at least not in large numbers, that they believe that there's anything in particular else that the United States should be doing. There is very little the United States can do to actually help in any particular action. The U.S. can, however, do a lot of damage if it does the wrong things. I think it's absolutely right to not take sides.
If you ask the protesters, they're all united in this. They say, leave us alone. There's absolutely nothing that Barack Obama can say to help the reform movement in Iran. Every word that comes out of his mouth will be used by the regime, by the supporters of Ahmadinejad, to bolster their argument that this whole thing is nothing but a Western ruse. They all said the same thing. Stop reaching out to us. You're not helping the situation. Campbell, as an Iranian and as an American and as somebody who has studied this country and who has a real stake in what's taking place in Iran, I can tell you that almost the unanimous opinion of the people who are on the streets is that the more the United States stays out of this, the better chance that they have to actually succeed.
It's up to the Iranian people to make a decision. We are not meddling.
And when I think back to 2009.
So now some 18 or more, actually, this was 2022, I believe. So sorry about that, the timing. Some 14 years later, President Obama reflected on that decision to remain silent.
In 2010, you guys will recall, there was a big debate inside the White House about whether I should publicly affirm what was going on with the Green Movement, because a lot of the activists were being accused of being tools of the West, and there was some thought that we were somehow going to be undermining their street cred in Iran if I supported what they were doing. And in retrospect, I think that was a mistake. Every time we see a flash, a glimmer of hope, of people longing for freedom, I think we have to point it out. We have to shine a spotlight on it. We have to express some solidarity about it.
Yes, there is a shine of hope there.
I've not heard from anyone.
So a lot is going on in our community. I will go through these slides a little bit more quick, but for instance, this rapper Tumaj Salehi has been rapping, just singing about the issues in Iran, has been detained. He has spent over 700 days in solitary confinement. He was sentenced to execution for his art. That has been overthrown right now with the global outpour of support for him. So if you think you cannot do something, believe me, you can. You can save lives by talking about these people. He's still in jail. He still needs our help. And that's all he does. He calls out the propaganda of the regime. I hope you can read the subtitles. So the reason I play this is that, again, it's in the lyrics, but he's calling out those that they call themselves reformists, as you saw in the subtitles, or the people who try to whitewash the crimes of the Islamic Republic. And he's singing from inside Iran, telling them that you're gonna find a rat hole or find an asshole. He means like at some point you're gonna be held accountable. I'll play a couple of minutes of what during the Women's Life Freedom Uprising, Secretary Clinton was saying about how you can help.
So on Iran, because clearly the whole world is watching the very brave women and girls there stand up for their rights, and we've also seen the crackdown. We also know that this is all sort of complicated for the United States with all sorts of other policy trying to get Iran, to come back into the nuclear accord, which, by the way, it was a US president who brought the world out of that. I spoke to the current Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, on this program yesterday and asked him what more the US could do to support the rights of Iranian women. Obviously, the US isn't going to intervene, militarily to overthrow any government. But what do you think, if you were Secretary of State, the US can do? And I think you were during the Green Revolution.
Yes. Well, first of all, during the Green Revolution in 2009, we made a decision based on the best intelligence and information we had at the time that overt American support for the protests would actually hurt those protests and the protesters themselves. So behind the scenes, we tried to keep social media operating so that people could communicate and organize. Now I think it's very different than it was 13 years ago. What's happening now deserves our full-throated support. And I think every time anyone speaks on behalf of the United States government, they need to be saying that they stand with the people of Iran, particularly with the women and girls. I also think we should continue to take whatever action is possible through international bodies. I was part of a group of women leaders who called for the UN to kick Iran off the UN Commission on the Status of Women. They should never have been on there in the first place. And I believe we're moving toward that actually being accomplished. At least it better be, because it's the right thing to do.
It happened, fortunately, with the work that was done. They were kicked out of that status. So in the interest of time, I wanted to tell you about the concept of gender apartheid, which is an important concept. It is about the treatment of women in certain countries, such as Iran and Afghanistan, as a second citizen, basically. Because as a woman over there, if I'm in an accident and I die, my family receives half of what is given compared to if a man dies. So I'm worth half. I can't file for divorce. I can't have the custody of my child. If I want to leave the country, I have to have written permission from my husband. So the gender apartheid is very similar to the racial apartheid in terms of being discriminated against based on, this time instead of race, gender. And it's there is a very large community of Iranian and Afghanistan and also international lawyers that are working on this to make this an international crime, which in that case it can trigger systems such as boycotting of the regime in multiple aspects, and then help Iranians inside Iran to take their country back. We are going to talk about that in our upcoming meeting. That is on September 15th. And I should have another slide for that. I will look for that, and if not, I will share it after this. On September 15th, we have an event in Bellevue, and a panel will, there's a conference and there is also art exhibit that shows, the reality of this movement in much better way than I am able to describe it. But the conference also includes international lawyers and women rights activists talking about the gender apartheid, what it means, and how you can help about that.